Good morning. Welcome to the January 12th work session of the special work session of the Ann Arbor City Council. Order has been called. Mr. Hupy, would you care to tell us what we're all doing here? That's a narrow bore question, not in the broadest of senses, although no doubt you could elucidate, I'm sure.
I would be delighted to talk about why we're here, the purpose of today's meeting.
Thank you.
DTE, as part of their regional strengthening of the electric grid, is bringing in additional power into our community and into the region. They have two projects. Some of the council members are already aware of the north route coming in on from DuVarn into the community from the north. This focuses on the southern project. The slight differences between these projects is the northern project is mostly in the hands of ITC, the provider of high voltage electricity to the community. This project from the southern route, the bulk of it and the part we're focusing on today is of lower voltage, so it is a DTE project specifically. So I know it might be confusing to keep the two companies separate. They frequently operate in close tandem and it's hard to separate them. But today we're focusing on the southern route from approximately the Bayless building, this public school building, into the area of Glen and Huron. So it's across a fairly large portion of the community. So that being said, I will introduce Molly Lampert-Coy, who represents DTE on this project, and Cynthia Stump, who is representing ITC. And I don't know which one. Molly's coming up first. So.
Thank you, Craig. Well, Honorable Mayor, City staff, and Ann Arbor City Council members, thanks for allowing us the opportunity to share with you information today on the Greater Ann Arbor System Reliability Project, specifically the DTE Subtransmission Southern Route. Special thanks to Craig and to Sarah Higgins for helping us secure the time to present to you this morning. I'm Molly Lampert-Coy, and I'm a regional manager for South Washtenaw, Lenawee, and Monroe counties. I share an office suite with Paul Gantz, and I'm sure many of you know Paul. Paul's been off on medical leave for a little while. I've been with DTE Energy for 25 years and 18 years in my current role, and again, helping Paul while he's been on medical leave. I will make some brief introductions for others that are here with me this morning. And let me start off by introducing Madeline Williams. I'll just ask you to stand, please. Madeline is a regional manager for Washtenaw, Livingston, and Ingham, and she'll be covering for Paul while Paul is off on medical leave. Dan Breaker, to my right here. Dan is General Manager, Major Enterprise Projects, and he is the project manager for this particular project. Mike Witkowski, Supervising Engineer and Ombudsman for the area. We have Dave Pickerel, who's the Manager of Southwest Region. And we also have Andy Detloff, who is our Principal Engineer, Energy Distribution, Subtransmission, and Planning. Thank you, Andy, for standing. And our contractor for this project is Marty Newmeyer. Marty is the Vice President and Manager with Metro Engineering Solutions. And Marty just stood. Thank you, Marty. And with us also on the project from ITC is Cynthia Stump, Regional Manager. And I'm going to invite Cynthia up just to make a few brief comments.
Thank you, Molly. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Happy New Year. We have our beautiful weather we have today to join us. So thank you for coming in, even though your students may be off school today. I'm Cynthia Stump. I'm the Regional Manager for ITC. ITC, as you may know, owns and operates the high voltage electric transmission grid. So the big distinguishing factor is the voltage. We are at 100,000 volts and higher, and DTE has lower than that. So in majority of lower Peninsula Michigan, ITC owns and operates the high voltage transmission lines. In the Ann Arbor region, we are working on two specific projects, as many of you know. One in the northeast quadrant, and that is a 120,000 volt transmission line connecting the existing Phoenix substation at DuVarn and the railroad to the new substation at Huron and Hubbard Parkway. We are also working on a southern project in the District 4, in Ward 4, coming from existing substation in Pittsfield Township, traveling north to the existing state substation. So there's the two projects. We do have information available on those projects afterwards if you'd like to discuss as well. But we are here today to help with DTE, to provide the information about the State Street expansion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. So we're going to go ahead and start with the presentation. On page 2, we discussed the meeting objective, and again, that's to provide the overview of the Greater Ann Arbor Reliability Project, specifically DTE Subtransmission Southern Route. And we're here to address any questions that you might have after the presentation is complete. This project is very important, not only to address power quality issues, but for Ann Arbor residents and to meet your future electrical and economic needs for the Ann Arbor area and region. And we've already touched on the introductions. Now on to project overview and the Southern Route description. Page 3 defines ownership, and Cynthia did a really nice job of kind of defining both ITC and DTE management. DTE generates power. We also operate all of the distribution systems, stations, subtransmission, distribution substations, and distribution lines, whereas ITC operates the transmission and substation and transmission lines. And really since the year 2000, most utilities kind of separated out their transmission, and so that's when ITC was formed around 2000, and they managed the transmission component of the electrical system. The next page kind of denotes our need and further elaborates the partnership that we work on in a very cooperative manner, DTE and ITC, to provide dependable electricity for Ann Arbor and the region. And you see up there, we're planning to build the 2 new electrical stations in Ann Arbor. We've defined those locations, and ITC must build new transmission lines to connect these 2 new stations with existing DTE energy infrastructure. At this point, I'm going to invite up Dan Breaker. As I mentioned, he's general manager, but also he's the subject matter expert on this project. And again, we'll be happy to address any questions you have at the very end of the presentation. And here's Dan.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mayor Taylor and council members. It's a pleasure to be back here to talk to you further about the overall Ann Arbor Reliability Improvement Project. As Molly and Cynthia mentioned, we do have basically 2 components of the project. One is to bring in power from the North Phoenix Station into the northern area of Ann Arbor, and then one from the south. Today's discussion is going to be around the subtransmission, which is a 40 kV voltage subtransmission lines that we're going to be running from the south. And basically the 40 kV is basically bringing power from a station to a substation. So it's not the distribution to particular residents, but it brings it to a substation that then goes out to distribution. On page 5, this is the infrastructure that has been built up over time to serve the 40 kV subtransmission in the area. And so basically you have stations surrounding Ann Arbor, and they are bringing in power from all different, vantage points, east, west, north, and south. And due to the growth of the Ann Arbor area, we've tied a lot of the 40 kV infrastructure together. And what this project is going to allow us to do by putting these 2 new stations in place is we're going to be able to untie this infrastructure. So if you have a fault in, say, the east side of Ann Arbor right now, that fault causes reliability issues all the way across Ann Arbor. It can be as much as 10 miles away that it can cause voltage sags and faults and things like that. And so by taking a big, large piece of the load off of these surrounding stations, we can untie these lines and then improve the overall reliability. On slide 6 talks to the overall benefits of the project. And again, as I mentioned, that we're looking to improve the overall, reduce power outages and voltage issues in the overall area. It's our intent to help support Ann Arbor's continued competitive advantage in attracting new economy around high-tech employers and to provide modern, high-quality electrical infrastructure to do this. And this project is dedicated to do that. As you know, there's been work that we've been ongoing to deal with localized problems in the area with tree trimming, pole replacements, installing new conductors, fuses, and pole top maintenance and pole top equipment. We continue to do that to try to improve the overall distribution reliability. This project is focused again on the subtransmission and will provide long-term reliability for the region and power quality for all of the customers in Ann Arbor. In addition to reliability, we are going to be addressing the growth in the area. So development in the area, as we do annual load forecasting analysis, and that's something that our Southwest region does on an annual basis to understand what the growth is in the area. And just the growth alone that's already projected based on current developments underway, we're looking at the need for 67 megawatts by 2020. So this is important to address as part of this overall project. Once the project's complete, we expect that Ann Arbor residents will see shorter power outages, fewer power outages, fewer customers impacted, and fewer voltage problems. On slide 7, there's been a number of touch points over the last few years on the project. So we started really reaching out in 2016 to inform city administrators and council members about the project, and we've had various touch points over time. I just want to reiterate that we are committed to ongoing periodic updates with the council, with the city administrators, and with the community. So we want to work with you to make sure that we do those outreaches. We do have contact information for your social media person, and we'll be working with them, but also updating you beforehand to make sure that we're doing the right things around project updates. So we're going to get right into the actual southern route coming from the south. Basically, we start out, and I'm going to go into more detailed pages that you'll be able to follow here in a minute, but basically we start out at, again, the state substation that exists today that we are upgrading. And from that state substation, which is just on State Street, just north of Eisenhower, next to the Bayless Administration Building, we're going to be coming up north on State Street all the way to Granger. We're going to move east on Granger to South Forest Avenue, and then north on South Forest Avenue to Washtenaw Avenue, and north on Washtenaw Avenue to East Huron Street. We anticipate the state station itself, that upgrade construction to occur between January of 2018 and October of 2019. We anticipate the subtransmission work to start in April of this year and end in October of 2019 as well. So with that, I'll move into more specific diagrams to show you the exact route. As I mentioned, we are starting at the state substation that's going to be upgraded. You can see on slide 9, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but I did want to just show it in a little more detail, that we're coming up State Street north, and then as we move up State Street on slide 10, we continue to move up north of East Stadium Boulevard, and then on slide 12, let me get to that. We move up State Street to, hold on, let me back up a little bit. So we move up State Street to Granger, and then east on Granger over to South Forest, and then up South Forest Avenue over to Washtenaw here, and then up Washtenaw to East Huron. And at East Huron, we'll be able to connect to the existing 40 kV infrastructure where there's a substation right there at the intersection of East Huron Street and Washtenaw. So one of the things we were asked to discuss was some of the constraints in the particular route that we've chosen. And there's really two constraints that we're concerned about and we're working with the city administration on. One is there's an underground stone reservoir on North Forest between South University and Forest Court. We are aware of that. One of the things that we're doing as we look at the particular route there, we're going to understand how much we're going to actually, our excavation, how much that will impact that reservoir. But we know how to deal with it. We're comfortable with going through that reservoir. We know that we need to basically restore it to as-built conditions, and we are committed to working with the city administration to make sure that we do that. Also up South Forest Street, there is a sanitary sewer system with leads that haven't been identified in the past from a GIS perspective. So the location of those leads is important for us to understand as we select the specific route on that street, which side of the street we're going to be on and where we're going to be at. So we are doing closed caption video through the sewer main to identify those leads and make sure that we locate each of those leads. So both of those things we feel comfortable dealing with. However, we have identified some alternate routes, and I'll actually go to the next slide to discuss those alternate routes. So the yellow area on slide 15 shows where that stone reservoir is. And if we did need to avoid that stone reservoir, we could go west on Willard Street and then north on Church Street, and then come back to South Forest or go on up to Washtenaw in the blue area. So those are two alternatives that we're looking at. We don't intend to use those alternatives, but if for some reason the stone reservoir became an issue, those are two potential alternate paths that we could take. On slide 16, I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing to manage community impacts around this project. We are committed to working with the city administration to ensure that we follow all city and county regulatory requirements and permit requirements that we work out with the city administration. Duck banks will be installed in stages along the route to minimize the amount of pavement that will be open at any one time. Traffic control plans will be implemented and construction sequenced along the construction route to minimize the impact of traffic flow to property entrances and in the construction areas. And also, we are taking into account pedestrian flow as well, because we know that there are pedestrian paths in this area as well that we need to consider. The underground construction opens will be covered at night to ensure that there's public safety. And obviously, we'll have people watching during the day, and obviously barricades and so forth as well per the city requirements. Pavement will be restored per the City of Ann Arbor requirements. Contractor will notify residents prior to any start of work. We'll be working out work hours with the city administration based on what's going on at any one time. So as our construction contractor identifies the specific plan of what roads are going to be worked on when, the city administration will work with us to figure out the right work hours, how to avoid particular events, whether there's sporting events going on or weekend football or what have you during the time this occurs. We'll be working with them to make sure that we work around those things. An agreement on the work at State Substation specifically has been reached with the Ann Arbor School District. So we've worked with them to get an easement along the incoming road there that we share. There's a private road that we share with the Bayless Administration Building. That's where the buses come in and out. And we are committed to not blocking that road and keeping at least one lane open at all times so that the buses can get in and out of the parking area there. And I just also want to iterate that, DTE is committed to working safely. Our contractors are committed to working safely, and we will follow all MIOSHA requirements as well. So with that, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to review the project with council, and I'll open it up to any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the DTE team and the ITC team. Molly, thanks for bringing everyone out. I have two questions, and I might actually have to jet. The first is the 67,000 homes. That's just a metric used for comparison, so we can wrap our heads around a number, right?
Yeah, that's just to
Okay.
really give people an idea of just how much power we're talking about.
Okay. Do you have a sense of how much in the next 2 years that projected increase is going to be? One, the university, two, private business growth, and three, residential? And then is there any that is making up for inefficient or in a inappropriate capacity today?
You mean capacity that doesn't exist today?
That should.
No, it's really based on the
Okay.
future projection of growth. So, I mean, like, it's not that we're not able to provide capacity to current needs. I'd have to get back to you on the
Okay.
exact breakdown of how much of it is,
It's a nice to know, I think.
education versus commercial versus residential,
Yeah.
and I can certainly get that to you.
Sure. Seeing as growth, and particularly growth of the university, is such a topic of interest to residents here,
Right.
I think it would be valuable to know for a lot of people. Second is the most residential areas that this project is going through are a neighborhood in the 4th Ward and a neighborhood in the 3rd Ward, which are pretty much a cohesive neighborhood.
Right.
Families share the same streets, same parks, same schools. Is there a possibility of scheduling a community meeting between those two neighborhoods, bring you guys out so you can answer the questions residents may have that we aren't experts on?
Right, yes, we'd certainly be willing to do that. We did have an open house back, I think in November, I believe, on this part. No, actually, it was September on this part of the project. And we did inform the residents in the area about that, but we certainly are committed to continued outreach. And so if there's a need for another session, we'd be happy to do that.
We'd be happy to work with
Okay.
you. You let us know, and we can work with staff. And again, back to the loading, we do load forecasting annually. That
Okay.
helps us understand what the needs are.
Understood.
But also, this will allow us to shift load so we can better manage, your load needs, especially on the, hottest days of the year in the summertime, if there might be existing problems out there, so.
Great. Yeah, I think a neighborhood-specific event is just such a residential area. These are residential streets that I think.
Local library or somewhere close.
There's a senior center,
Senior center?
which I think would be a good location. The warming. I think the senior center is a little bigger, but, we can figure the details out later.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that would be very helpful
Sure.
and get a lot more buy-in from the neighbors. I think there's value in this project. I think they just need to hear how it's going to affect them.
Right.
Councilor Blount.
Thanks. I'd just like to thank the representatives from DTE and ITC for meeting with us today. That's certainly appreciated. And I appreciate that you have a separate slide dedicated to managing community impacts. And as that slide notes, the traffic control plans are very important. And that's true for the Southern Project and the new Apex substation and transmission line project in Northeast Ann Arbor, and that's the area that Councilmember Westfall and I represent, also Councilmembers Telisopathy and Bannister. And I do have several questions regarding that project, so I'll save those questions to after my colleagues are finished with their questions about the Southern Power Project. And I'd just appreciate if you and staff can stick around for those.
Absolutely. We're
Thanks.
here to answer even if one-off questions.
I have a fair number of questions about that, so, thanks.
Councilmember Westfall.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. From our experience on the north side, my impression is that when, for example, when a story hits the press and it's like this power upgrade is being proposed and it's going to run from here to there, you get a different level of reaction than when a neighborhood notice goes out and it says Granger will be shut down, for example. So I'm curious about I'm assuming some of these construction days will involve, a complete closure to through traffic, but only, obviously, people will be able to leave their homes, I'm assuming, and not need to park on the next block. But, so that's, I guess, my first question. The second one is that it has been very helpful. ITC set up a special page on their website for the North End project, and whenever there's an update or a meeting announced, or I'm assuming when construction begins, there's going to be, neighbors in this part of the map expect disruption from this date to this date, and that's been really helpful. And even we've requested that even developers do it when there's a large project in phasing, and so just so neighbors have some awareness, or if something runs behind schedule, that can alert them. So I guess that's another question: will you have a web page or some other information?
Absolutely, and I think we would work with Craig and your social media person too. We can provide periodic, like, press updates. You would get the information first, always, and then, anything you'd want to put out there for the public. We can put it on our page, put it on your page. Absolutely.
As long as somebody has a running update, I think is helpful.
I
Thanks.
think it's very helpful to get project updates as we move and progress.
Just a quick follow-on, I appreciate Kirk asking about this and making this suggestion to provide this updated information on a webpage. Paul Gans, prior to the meeting, I think it was in October, or was it the one at the Holiday Inn on Plymouth Road for the Apex substation at Northeast Ann Arbor transmission line project, did ask for the neighborhood Northeast Area Association contacts, and I provided that to him, and Kirk probably did as well. So, so you should have that, and that's obviously, those are good contacts and people to, yeah, get this information to.
Councilmember Crapo.
Yeah, this will actually be going right next to my home, almost through Fourth Ward there. Just, what is the type of disruption the neighbors can expect in terms of, how the lines actually go in? Is it gonna be, you have like a trench line, put everything in, or is it, you're gonna bore and then?
Right. There's gonna be a open trench, basically. What we do is we'll be saw cutting about an 8-foot wide amount of pavement where the trench is gonna go, and then it'll narrow down from there to about a 3-foot trench opening at the bottom. And then you basically lay your conduit in there, then you concrete that in, and then cover it back up with fill per the city specifications, and then you concrete that over. We try to minimize the amount that's open at any one time. Essentially, we can only have 200 feet open at a time, so we'll have basically that, we'll lay 80 foot of conduit at a time, but we'll have 200 foot of trenching, and so the conduit will kind of just work its way up over time. And then we will manage basically we'll communicate with residents ahead of time that their particular area is going to be worked on this specific time frame, and then try to get in and out as quickly as possible.
Okay. All right, yeah, and I agree with Councilmember Ackerman, having a community meeting would be good, just to be able to, we can actually reach out to the residents along Granger and different areas and make sure they know to show up if they have questions. So thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
Just to add on to that, I've noticed from the city that the communications between the city and the schools have really improved in the last year. So we're getting information about things like pedestrian safety and in line with those messages. So please do consider that avenue as well. It's been tremendously effective from my
We've
perspective.
had some good interactions with the schools thus far and would continue that.
Great, thanks.
Other questions? Councilmember Eaton.
I just want to thank you for how good your communication with us has been. We've met before, and I appreciate that you keep us up to date. I do want to support Mr. Ackerman's expression of a desire to have the neighborhood meeting when it goes through, Granger and Oakland. I think it's especially important to maintain some webpage or something to keep us up to date when you're considering the alternative routes around the Oakland route. So just thank you, and I look forward to the neighborhood meetings and further communication.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Bannister.
Yes, hi. I had two question comments. On the one thing that feedback you might have heard from neighbors sometime last year was that whether it's the city or DTE, when those big grinding bobcats come through and clear the tree trimming and landscaping, it's sort of maybe an FYI or a question that I know that's the one where the neighbors might take the initiative to make a complaint or an email. Do you guys, do you have anything in particular about trying to be sensitive?
Absolutely. So when we do line clearance, typically we'll do a letter to the individual property owner. We have a door hanger that also goes on the door. If we're not able to meet with the customer in person, we'll make an appointment to come back. We try and work directly with the property owner. We flag, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, on any tree trimming, but we typically will tag any trees that are cited for taking down in the process. But it really is working one-on-one with the property owner. So there's a lot that goes into that. We'll also do like a press release out ahead of time. So it's a pretty comprehensive process that we work on when we do that. So, in fact, I know Madeline's meeting with city staff today to talk about some line clearance work. Just, you know, we've really tried to be proactive, working ahead of time with the communities to lay out the plans of where we're going, so.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And I had one other follow-up on that, was about the underground stone reservoir. And I don't know for sure what that looks like, but if you do go through that area and uncover a bunch of beautiful Ann Arbor granite stones or anything, would that be an opportunity to leave some of those unearthed and use in some of our park landscaping or anything?
That area is a constructed stormwater reservoir. We built that, I looked at Allison 3 years ago, 4 years ago. That was stone that we imported to put in there to create void space under the road so that there was a place to hold stormwater. And it's either southern Michigan limestone or Ohio limestone. I don't know where it came from, but one of those locations.
Thanks.
Councilmember Lum.
Thanks. So my questions are on the Apex substation and the transmission line project in northeast Ann Arbor. I have questions on both the curb cut location on Huron Parkway and on the transmission line project connecting to the Phoenix Station on Duvarn. So I'll start with the curb cut location.
Did you,
Yeah, we are prepared, we are prepared to talk to you on that. I don't know if we want to tie up the whole body or just meet with you and Kurt on one-on-one.
Okay, it does involve DTE's vehicles, so if I can just ask the
Oh,
question here.
they'll be part of the discussion
Okay.
afterwards.
he actually
So-
brought renderings and.
They can show you what they're,
Okay, I just, you know, there's been a lot of activity on Huron Parkway related to the U of M. And this issue of the curb cut on Huron Parkway has come up, and concerns have been raised, concerns we obviously share because that area is aesthetically pleasing. It's a natural vista we should try to preserve if at all possible, and creating a 30-foot wide access road off Huron Parkway would violate the natural look of the area, while providing alternatively access to a new substation off the, I'm sorry, U of M's not here, from the rear of the U of M expanded parking lot on Huron Park, on Hubbard, would be, you know, far less obtrusive. And I understand the issue here is that the slope that DTE's vehicles, that's how it was explained to us, can manage, and U of M concluded that Hubbard wasn't feasible because of the slope. So you're nodding, yes. We got a June 22nd, 2017 letter from the U of M to the city that had data on the slopes, which indicated the elevation changes to the substation to the extended U of M parking lot range between 14 to 24 feet, and the elevation change from the substation to the proposed Huron Parkway curb cut is 6 to 16 feet. The two slopes are not that different. And an elevation change of 14 to 24 feet, it's not, you know, it's not Pikes Peak. I'm not an engineer, but the city and U of M have smart engineers, and I think we could figure out a different access route off Hubbard and the U of M parking lot for this, you know, access, the substation access that keeps the natural vista of Huron Parkway intact. And I recognize it may not fit the normal model, but preserving this natural vista, I feel very strongly about this. I know, I can see my colleagues nodding in agreement. I know Kirk feels the same
And
way.
perhaps we can, this is an issue that, my recollection is that this issue is indeed going to come back before council.
Right, but I would
And-
like to hear from city staff, the
well,
U of
and-
M, DTE, and ITC that are both
And my
here.
understanding is that, and a couple things. One, it's not on the agenda. And I
Well,
understand
we're
that
talking, this is access to the substation, and I
It's the
asked at the
southern-
council, at the last meeting, I asked, right, if we could include time to discuss the northeast transmission line, and
my understanding is that everyone is delighted to remain after the work session and have
I'd like
this.
to have this publicly discussed, because this
It's
impacts
not as a-
northeast Ann Arbor.
I'm not committed to not discussing it, and I think that we're going to absolutely have this conversation at the council meeting
Will
when the issue.
will ITC and DTE be there?
I would expect so if the issue relates to them.
Well, they're here now, and my question is to them. And, I mean, I would like to know, in this case, what it would take to create a Hubbard access. U of M's been working with DTE and ITC, as has the city, and, you know, they're here now.
And my understanding is that they're delighted to talk to you now, but that the public work session relates to the matter on the agenda, and that you'll have the opportunity to both talk to them about this project substantively right now, as soon as we're done here. And then, based upon the result of that conversation, your evaluation of that conversation, have that, discussed when it comes before council, when the curb cut comes before council.
In response to my question about this, at the January 8th meeting, Administrator Lazarus indicated that time would be set aside at this work session for discussion of the Apex substation and transmission line project in northeast Ann Arbor. They're here. Everybody else can leave the room, but I would like to, ask them about this. And I
Yeah,
also
I
have
hear
questions
you feel
about
strongly
phase.
about this. I'm
I
not-
also
I
have
don't-
questions about, can I ask questions about phase 2 of the transmission line project?
I don't wish to, have too much of a fight about this. If you're committed to doing this, then, I'm delighted. I'll, continue on with it. We'll continue with the work session. It strikes me that it's, we have the agenda item, but I hear what you're saying too. Councilmember Kalasapis, you've been trying to get
Just
in.
a couple of things. I clearly remember Jane saying this to
Yeah,
Mr.
and he said,
Lazarus, and
"No
it was
problem.
agreed."
We'll
And,
talk about it."
I also
Thanks.
feel like this is not a Jane issue.
But
I definitely
absolutely, no,
care.
this is something we all
and,
wanna talk-
I
we
know
all wanna know
we
about.
talked about it, Councilmember Bannister and I, she also made it here because we were very keen to talk about the Northeast issue.
Fair
And
enough.
I feel it should be, I don't want any Open Meetings Act violation because we
Right.
can just shut this down, but if there is enough quorum, it would be improper to do that. If there are enough council members here listening to them, I just want to make sure this is not a Jane issue.
Oh,
We
no,
are
no,
all-
I
And
understand.
I
Thanks,
just
Amy.
think it's very important that public be part of this because we have a stake in this too.
Plainly,
So I would
and-
really appreciate it if you'd make it,
Let's.
Okay, thank you.
Let's roll. with-
Okay,
with
thank
that.
you, thank you.
Let's just do that.
I- I would, so, could you tell me what the current thinking is? I'll send you my other questions about the curb cut.
DTE was prepared to share with you today, but not on the screens, renderings of what the driveway would look like after the construction was done and the re-landscaping was done. We asked them to come prepared to share that, because I believe, and this is my belief, some of the folks are reacting to the fact that they're going to see a driveway with a straight shot into the substation looking at, and this is my own personal judgment, ugly electrical equipment at the end of the driveway. And they have designed the driveway with curvature in it, so there's landscaping between the street and the substation to
Right.
preserve that. But they weren't prepared to do it in this setting. They were prepared to share that more than one-on-one.
Thanks, Mr. Cupey. I did attend the meeting at the Holiday Inn where there were a couple of diagrams showing, where this curb cut would enter. At the time, it was unknown where the transmission line was going to run, but at least you knew where this curb cut was gonna go, and anyway, that was shared at that neighborhood meeting, back last fall, but subsequent to that, there was this, there's a swath, I noticed just before the holidays, a swath was cut into the tree and brush line close to Huron Parkway in that area, and I, it's the area where I'm assuming the substation is going to be built and the proposed access or curb cut is. I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know if this was done for the Apex substation, or,
So I think there's been additional work done on this, and Dan unfortunately only has like a single copy here, but he can
It's the
show
four
you
of us that
for
would-
line
well,
of
especially-
sight and enhanced landscaping.
this is the second ward, so the two of us
maybe
would.
If it could come along. He's trying to pass that out right now as we
I
speak.
mean, I just didn't know if that was done for the Apex substation, or if it's related to the U of M's parking lot expansion.
Dan, do you want to make any further elaboration on the need for the curb cut?
It just really comes down to what you mentioned before, which is our allowance for the grade coming in and out of the station is, I believe, 6 degrees. 6%, sorry, 6% grade. Say that again? 6% or less. And so as we were working with U of M and the city to try to figure out the best way to do this, and the fact that we want to make sure that the station is set in a way that is not visible to the overall community. We wanted to try to hide the station, and in order to do that, we needed to set it at a grade that would allow it to be hidden. And so get with that 6% maximum grade and trying to set it in a way that is not visible to the community, the curb cut off of Huron Parkway was the best route.
Okay, can someone please then explain, clarify the reason for cutting such a wide swath of trees there for this? Because I can see from the map that you just gave us that it is for the Apex substation.
Specifically, what area are you talking
I
about?
just, and I'll just go on
What
record,
you're
I just don't
visually seeing
understand
right now
why,
during
why this
construction, or-
preparation work was done before the city approved the location for the curb cut.
This is a rendering at this point. It's only
And I may be speaking a little bit from hearsay. I don't think DTE has access to the site yet. That clearing is not DTE's clearing.
Okay, that's U of M's?
Yes,
Okay.
from my understanding. I
All
don't
right,
know that
thanks.
for a fact.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Now, Phase 2. Just what is the current thinking for Phase 2, when the transmission line project will begin? I know it was, slated to begin in spring, and its duration. And if you have any information on the specific traffic control measures that are planned, road closures, detours, that sort of thing, and their location and duration, if you can provide that, that would be
address that, Cynthia?
I just want to clarify, you are talking about
Phase 2.
from Apex to Phoenix. Okay, just because for the sub-transmission, I just want to make sure we're on the clear conversation. So for specifically 1 and 2 that are most directly
Yeah, I'm all
impacted.
Apex and the Northeast transmission.
Yeah, just so I try to
Yep.
make sure, so people understand. So the current construction that you're referencing, so ITC is looking at doing a 4-phase submittal, 1 through 4 along Apex to Phoenix. So we are doing that through the permitting process. I don't have construction dates for you at this time. I know our in-service date to meet DTE's energy request is by the end of the year, but I don't have those specific dates at this time because we are still going through the permitting process.
Do you know when you might have them?
I did not bring those specifically for this,
okay.
for the State Street, but as I did for the construction around the roundabout, I can provide those, once I have that from engineering and once we have a contractor, we're able to provide, this is the information, this is the timeframe, and this is the date. I honestly, I don't, because we don't have that identified at this time.
Okay, when you have that.
Yes, absolutely.
And, if you provide them,
Yes.
that would be great. And then on the terms of the traffic control measures, yesterday I drove by the Nixon Green DeVarn roundabout, and where Phase 1 is, and it's nice to see that the restoration is happening now. In fact,
Yes.
they're pouring concrete yesterday, so Mother
Yes.
Nature really helped out
Yes,
on
our
that
goal
front.
was to be in and out very quickly, and less disturbance is great.
Yeah, and it seemed, so Phase 1 was 1,100 feet of duct bank, and in total, so that's about 3 miles of transmission lines between the two substations.
Total, yes, would be a total of 3 miles. I don't have the exact number for what the roundabout was this past,
Okay.
over the holiday, but
So-
if that is what I told you before.
So considering that Phase 1 took about a month, that suggests a pretty long duration of road closures and traffic control measures to complete the balance. Can you speak to that?
It depends, what's that? Right, well, yes, the weather can impact, but also determining on the final route location of where we do the deck bank. And so in working with city staff, we're working to minimize the impact to that on the actual road and to the traffic and to any concerns. So all of that is done through, once the drawings are submitted and the plans are reviewed.
Okay, I've got 2 more questions. Okay, thanks. Thank you. So we've received a memo from Mr. Lazarus last week indicating there wouldn't be any coordination between this transmission line project and the Nixon Quarter Improvement Project, and it stated that, quote, "Staff is coordinating the location of the ITC duct bank along Nixon Road to minimize impacts to the pavement and thus traffic and accommodate future utility service connections," period, end quote. I wonder if you can speak to what minimizing impacts means and what degree of road tear-up will occur, if any, or whether the lines will be placed outside the roadway.
So I don't have our design engineer firm Burns and McDonnell here with us at this time who has those specific details. What I can tell you is that we are working with city staff to ensure that any design within the road right-of-way would have minimal impact, meaning they would review it to see what's best for future construction or future installment of any utilities that the city would have, as well as that ITC would have. So there is that coordination piece going on. But due to the immediate need of the electric reliability in the area and to meet the needs of our customers, and then therefore DTE can meet the needs of the customers in Ann Arbor, we must be able to do that transmission line sooner than
Yeah,
later.
I understand, yeah, this is an important project and why you want to move forward, and my disappointment is not with you, it's the lack of coordination, it's with the city. Last question. So, the Nixon Quarter improvement recommendations do not include adding lanes on Nixon Quarter, but do include a series of roundabouts at key intersections. And my appreciation for this was heightened yesterday because you're repairing, redoing the sidewalk around the roundabout that, you know, was just recently built, obviously. And constructing, I should say, these roundabouts will require reconfiguring approaching roadways, because they're roundabouts, and sidewalks in locations where ITC is going to be responsible for restoring the roads and the sidewalks once their lines are installed. So my question is there an opportunity to have ITC install at least the sidewalks in the new locations? Because we have a design for these roundabouts, and avoid the economic penalty of installing sidewalks twice. I'm sorry to, again, raise this issue of coordination between the 2 projects, but it does not make any economic sense at all to tear up
I'm going to ask.
what we just did and pay to do it again, which is what's happening right now around the Nixon Green DeVarn roundabout.
Understand what we have right now is a conceptual plan. We do not have a detailed design plan, and where those roundabouts will end up and where those sidewalks will end up are not determined until the detailed design is done. So I can't say where any piece of sidewalk will end up out there exactly until the design is done.
Can't? What would it take to?
You'd have to complete the design, which we're working on right now, and it's about a 1.5-year process, a year process to do that level of detailed design. Back to your piece about the sidewalk being torn out, we had a discussion with that about leaving that sidewalk out. We had a contract to put that in with a repayment of just shy of $1 million. In the way the contract was written, for good or bad, was a complete intersection, which included the sidewalk. So it's not to jeopardize our payment from, or the ability to retain our payment we put the sidewalk in to meet the completion date, understanding that it was likely going to be torn out. But I wasn't willing to risk hundreds of thousands of dollars of payment for meeting a contract deadline. And it was done with discussion with the attorney's office, fairly detailed discussion. And by the time we figured out how long it would take to get an agreement to let us change the date, it was easier to take the sidewalk out and put it back in. That's just the short of it.
Just think from a taxpayer's perspective, though, you know, they see us do this nice roundabout, put in sidewalks, and I saw, you know, and we tear it up, you know, a couple months later, now we're redoing it. And, you know, I'm just trying to find a way to avoid that. And it just, again, it doesn't make economic sense. And if we could somehow find, because we're going to do the Nixon Corridor improvements, and,
Yes, but we don't know what year yet.
well, some of us are going to, right,
Need
that's
the
a,
money, right?
yeah, right. But,
Who paid for replacing the sidewalk after it was torn out?
ITC did.
So it wasn't,
Right.
so the taxpayers didn't pay for it twice. In fact, we didn't
No,
pay for it once.
No, but with the Nixon Corridor, you just heard Mr. Lazarus, we don't know when is the latest that these Nixon Corridor improvements are going to be made. So we will have built sidewalks there around these roundabouts, which we know are going to be torn up. Yeah, they're going to have to do it again, but it's added, again, disruption, and it just, again, I don't think that makes, perhaps you do, but I just don't think that makes.
Your point is not correct, because when ITC puts in their ductwork, they'll be in, they'll be out. We will have not expended any funds at that point. The coordination that has been.
But ITC will have.
Addresses the issue that we need to make sure that we can provide in the future replacement of city utilities. That coordination is essential, that's being done, so that we're not precluded from the efficient construction of water, sewer, and other city-owned utilities because there's a transmission main in the way. And that is very valuable, and that is saving us costs in the future.
I'm not following what you just said, I'm sorry.
So when we go to do Nixon Road at some point in the future, that project will include underground city utilities, water, wastewater, stormwater. We need to make sure that the work that ITC is doing now will accommodate those future utilities, because the worst thing that would happen is for us to think we're going to put a water line in place and there's a transmission main there. That coordination is being done. They're going to place their lines in a manner that doesn't preclude or add additional cost to our work in the future.
But it's wasted cost for ITC. I mean, that should matter to us too.
There is
because
no,
they're gonna
there's no
be-
waste for cost.
Well, they're putting in sidewalks that are gonna get torn out down the road and removed. And the whole idea of coordinating this was to do it once and to incur the expense once. That's not happening, and
And
we're
we
not
made
widening,
We
we're not
made best
proposing to
efforts
wi-
to do that, and we've coordinated the placement of utilities. Whenever you do a large project,
Anytime we
over
do a
time,
road.
there is some infrastructure that is sacrificial in nature, because you get value out of putting sidewalks in now and improving public safety, with the knowledge that in the future, they may have to be replaced.
I don't disagree, and that is correct. But in this case, we have a partner here that will cover the reconstruction costs, and we should take advantage of that opportunity, which is going to be a lost opportunity, because we have not coordinated our Nixon Corridor Improvement Project with this ITC project. There's no,
Well, I don't agree with that statement.
well, then let's coordinate it and get the design work done so we can start construction and it occurs simultaneously.
The cost of
Anything other than that
construction
is
for
not-
the utilities and the roadway are beyond what we have available in funding right now.
Not for the
there
design,
is-
that was a budget
but-
amendment.
But design notwithstanding, you have to be able to go to construction. We don't have those funds available
It's a matter
right
of
now.
priorities, that's it.
Well, it's not funded right now. It's a major expenditure that would cause a significant disruption to the capital improvement program. And in order to get there, it's just not possible to balance the need for improved power service to our community with a project in the future at this point.
I will simply reiterate and this is the last I'm going to say about this publicly, I guess, at this point, but I will simply reiterate that when we approved adding this new city in this part of town, the Toll Brothers projects, the Woodbury Club projects, over 1,000 units, what do we hear from people? We heard traffic, accessibility along the Nixon corridor. It's a big problem. What do we say to people? We will fix this. Told them we would fix this. And the reason I say it's a matter of priorities, if we care about our residents, if we really are honest and step forward to address these concerns, this should be given priority. Not buried in the capital improvements plan or told, well, yeah, it has to make it into the 6-year plan, it's not there yet, so we have no idea when we're gonna fix this. That is beyond disappointing.
When when we had conversations with Mr. Gans and then Council Member Brie was there, we had conversations. One of our requests was whether you could lay in the fiber when you were putting it down, and Mr. Gans was saying, oh, it's cost of fiber is just so cheap, it's like literally pennies per feet or whatever. It wasn't going to be I'm just curious, is that being done while you are putting in your infrastructure down?
We looked at the need for the fiber. We started off with, maybe it would be nice to have fiber there, but we started looking at what need we had for fiber there. And north of Plymouth Road, we don't have a need for fiber. When we looked at it hard and close, there is a potential that we will need some sort of conduit connection in the Hubbard, Huron Parkway area, but it's shrunk tremendously in extent. They would, at most right now, would be from Plymouth Road down to Hubbard. Otherwise, there's no need, after we looked at it, for fiber elsewhere. And then we were looking at, is co-locating the fiber inside the high-voltage duct bank what we really want to do? Is that where we want it? And our staff that maintains it aren't excited about it.
Okay, and my last question is, the Nixon part of the work, which is phase 2, how long is it going to be? And are both sides of the street going to be closed, or would you have one-way traffic with stop signs so people can still use the Nixon? Because my biggest worry is Nixon is already a bottleneck, and is this going to take 1 year and that road is going to be out of commission? That's my biggest concern right now. Thank you.
And I respect your concerns, and we understand the concerns. I really don't have those answers today, and we don't have those because we don't have the final submission and then the conversation back with the right-of-way permit. But what I can commit to is that as we work with city staff to determine where that is, we'll be able to provide updates to council. So I know you also have websites and share it with your homeowners and different things. Similar to how we did around the roundabout, we'll try to make sure you guys have that information of the timing and then the construction, and if there were any detours or anything. But I honestly, I don't have that at this time because we're still working through those discussions.
One suggestion is, because of the 2 schools already there, Clay and Logan, if you can maximize the closing of that area during school holidays, would be just fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Even though the construction and the design is not complete yet, I'm sure you're hearing that traffic disruption, would be greatly appreciated to be kept to a minimum, and, I guess to the extent that however far on the edge of the right-of-way it can go so that it, doesn't create problems down the line is appreciated. I'm sure that's redundant. And I before we close out the discussion on the potential coordination, am I understanding correctly that there's a mismatch between, even on the most aggressive timeline in terms of the city designing, getting final designs for Nixon, and then getting the money and then constructing it, that would, the end point of that takes place beyond the tolerance of ITC to install their infrastructure. Is that,
That's correct.
That's what they're saying.
okay? So it would be
They want to get it done.
incumbent on us to find the money for construction as soon as possible, get in the CIP.
I just want to reiterate, the Nixon Road corridor will be a far more intrusive project than ITC's project. We talked to ITC about possible financing strategies that didn't pan out, because in the end, it cost the city taxpayer more money to do it that way because of the cost of money and financing. We have significant issues in our water and wastewater systems that address our ability to provide those services citywide that we need to account for in programming capital dollars. Those dollars also need to provide for upgraded water and sewer service in the Nixon corridor, as well as the construction. And I don't disagree, it would be great to have all this done at one time, but even if we did do it at the same time, our work in the right-of-way will take far longer than your work will, because you are in and out because you're running a conduit. We have to put in utility lines, we have to build the sub-base, it's just a longer process. We tried to see where we could overlap, it just didn't work. And when we talk about major disruption of the capital improvement program, there are needs citywide that are critical and pressing in terms of delivering basic service that we've got to address. So I'm not in any way dismissing the concerns that have been raised about the issues along Nixon Corridor. We've done the traffic study. We're going to do our very best to advance that project. But we've got to address other issues as well. And as I said, we couldn't keep up with the speed of construction of what you're going to do because the nature of work is different. And in the end, in looking at the benefit to the taxpayers and the burden and the traffic impacts, the best thing to do is to address the electrical reliability issues short-term and quickly, and do it in a way that doesn't disrupt or preclude our work in the future. So while we weren't able to do the construction at the same time, I think the coordination and planning that went in to making sure that we don't preclude us from doing the right thing in the future was not insubstantial, and it's not to be neglected.
Councilmember Westphal, you still have the floor.
Thank you. And if I could just clarify something with DTE on the subject of the substation on Hubbard. As was noted, I don't know if U of M or DTE or what the communication was about the point of access. It's obviously still an open question here, but a lot of people have noticed that effectively the entire hillside between, I guess, what's the projected site and Huron Parkway has just been clear cut. So,
Yep.
and I understand that you guys have not been on site, that's been just U of M work, is that correct?
Correct, that's U of M's work.
Based on, and how did they know where to clear?
Well, obviously, we've provided them some design for the station and where we need the pad, specific pad for the station to be installed. So that's part of their work. Their work is not entirely our station, so, and I don't want to speak for U of M, so I think it'd be better to address that with them.
Okay, so are you saying you just gave them that parameters of the pad and not your proposed access, and they cleared, is that correct?
Our design does include the access.
Does or does not?
It does.
Does to Huron Parkway?
Yes.
So they cleared based on the assumption it would be connecting with Huron Parkway?
I'm not sure exactly what their basis for clearing what they've cleared at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember
Yeah,
Long?
I appreciate Councilmember Westphal drilling down this because, again, at that meeting in the fall, and the U of M planner Sue Gott was there, Jim Costeva was there, and there was another gentleman from the U of M present. And again, there was a drawing showing this area, and they reassured us, I asked about this, that this substation would not be visible from Huron Parkway, and we all, commiserated about, yeah, it's nicely treed, et cetera, et cetera. It's aesthetically pleasing, so the trees there will hide this substation. Yeah, they just cut a huge swath through that entire area, and it's just enormously disappointing. I mean, it's
Yeah, the plan is to reforest.
And this never
after.
came up at that meeting, yeah, right, but, right, it's just a significant concern that obviously was not well understood, I guess. And then just lastly, again, on this coordination aspect, the reason I brought this up last spring, and council approved the budget amendment to, you see some rolled eyes in the room, but it was important for our residents in the northeast part of town to coordinate this. We brought it up last spring. Again, this is not DTE or ITCs. I certainly understand the importance of this project and why you want to move forward. The expectation, hope, was that we would do our best to coordinate this and at least come up with a design, and with some design that we would know where these sidewalks are going to go around the roundabout. We're not planning to expand the road, just build a series of roundabouts. And so, just looking for ways to minimize not only the physical construction impact for our residents, but the economic impact. So, thanks.
Further questions? Mr. Hupy?
I'm going to offer on behalf of DTE, if anybody wants to look at their renderings for the driveway after reforestation.
We're happy to stick around.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind folks that they don't have them for the screens, but they do have them in paper.
Very good. Thank you. That was very helpful and engaged. This is an important thing for the community. We need to have robust electrical service, and we're glad to hear how you're seeking to provide that, so thank you. We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. Speakers will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time clock. We may have only one person speaking at a time, and as a matter of courtesy, and finally, if you require assistance in speaking before council, we'd be delighted to provide it to you. Is there anyone who would like to speak at public comment? Seeing no one, public comment is closed. We are adjourned. Thank you.